Uh, Brian Bajan and I just got off a 2-hour webinar and our topic was quantum physics as the science of possibilities and how it intersects with spirituality. And I'll give you some highlights if I can remember things we talked about. As I understand it, quantum physics is a science of possibilities. It's a science where the cause and effect science of the last 600 years, recently, well over the last 30 or 40 years, has turned that upside down. And as far as I understand, say if you go back to the physics of the 16th century with René Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am. And that was at a time when in the Western world, God was up here, we were down here, our thinking was here, our bodies were here, there was cause and effect in the world, and it was all very mechanistic. And while on the other side of the planet, in Eastern religions, they have a much greater understanding that there's some kind of flow. There isn't necessarily a cause and effect. God was not up here, God was here. Now I don't understand very much about it, but I like how that feels. Because we tend to live in a world of cause and effect, that we think that we have some sort of control over things, that, oh, I did this and this happened. Well, it's not really conducive to personal growth, because the world is a lot more mysterious than that. One of the more interesting things about quantum physics that I heard was, when you look, I remember this quote, when you look at it, it's a particle. When you look away, it's a wave. In other words, we as human beings have an infinite number of possibilities in front of us. And it's only when we choose, when we look at one, they all collapse into one. So we perceive that life has limited options and that we have some sort of a say over our world. Well, I think it's really interesting because how we choose an outcome is based on what we already know, what we've already experienced, the thinking that has been stuck into our brains, the emotions that have gotten stuck into our body. So the question is, how do we make a choice from infinite possibilities? Or at least, how do we see more than one? What I also liked was this idea that the science of quantum physics is dependent on the observer who witnesses the experiment or what's happening in the world has an effect on what is happening. Now, I don't understand this, but to be an observer, in that case, to be an observer is to be a master of your universe, because by observing, that's a choice. Now, what does all this have to do with girls or your life? Well, think about this. I think most men who come into this work, and maybe they just want to know how to talk to girls, the number one thing that they say is, when we ask, why don't you go talk to her, their first answer is, I'd be bothering her. Now, that's a single outcome that is based on what your perception of the world is. Now, if you talk to women, my good friend Johnny Saporno's gal, Violet, said, how dare you, or how dare any man, make up my reality for me? Which kind of blew my mind when I heard her say that. And if you do believe that you are bothering her, that you would be bothering her, when you do go up and talk to her, she will be bothered. 100%. If you have I'm bothering her energy in you, she is going to be bothered. Another thing I picked up as I was researching the call was back to the observer. And I had read about meditation and how we believe when when we observe something, I observe my guitar over there. My guitar, because I can observe my guitar, I am not the guitar, right? You can't be the observer and the object at the same time. Now, let's say I have a thought about my guitar. How about I have a thought about my guitar playing? My guitar playing is not as good as others. I'm not that great a guitar player. Now, in meditation, I can observe me thinking about my skills as a guitar player. Now, suddenly, because I am the observer, and you can't be the observer and the object at the same time, I am not my thought about the guitar. Well, that's pretty liberating. Okay, so if I'm not my thought or about my guitar, then it's not that I am a good guitar player or not a good guitar player. I'm merely observing my thinking. Now I learned to take it a step farther. Can I observe myself observing? Can I be aware of my own awareness? Can I be in that spot where I am even above my own awareness of my guitar thinking? Now, I've tried this a few times, and if you guys haven't tried this before, when you step back into the seat of consciousness, being the observer observed, it is the most powerful, my body is flooded, and then it closes back down. So I've made a practice of observing my observer over and over and over again, and each time this sense of peace starts to extend farther and farther out until it's gone again. But it's in that snapping back which brings us back to the singularity of what our reality is. For a moment, for a suspended moment, I was absolutely free of that. I also read that, what does enlightenment feel like? And the writer said that enlightenment feels that moment when you get a joke. And you know, when you're listening to a stand-up comedian, he's telling a story, and then he rips the story in the other direction, causing you to just, that startle moment where you can't feel your body and your thoughts, you thought you were talking about one thing, it turns out he's talking about another, and your whole head explodes for a moment, and you probably burst out laughing. The writer said that is what enlightenment feels like. That moment when you're unmoored, you're detached, and maybe even a little delighted at the absurdity of it all. So, to wrap up, what does this have to do with the women or your life or anything? Well, let's think about that. We have so many infinite possibilities for our life. And by switching into the observer, back into the seat of your consciousness, you can start to see them unfold as opposed to reactively choosing one. Infinite possibilities when you're not looking, one that snaps into the reality as soon as you try to find it. So that's what they mean by to stop seeking, to sit back into your consciousness and watch it all unfold. And then you have choice. You have true choice. A hero's perspective of choice is among many that you can freely choose from proactively, responsibly. And once you do find that one choice that you can make, choose it. Make your mind up quickly, change your mind slowly. All too often we do the opposite. We hem and we haw and we think and we test and then we make, for me it was pros and cons charts. If I do this, if I do that, that's good and that's bad. It's all insanity. And then it never has led to a really great choice in my life. On the other hand, when I made quick decisions quickly, those came from a different part. Those came from my body, from my intuition. Like, this just feels right. Let's try this. And then rather than reactively saying, oh, that didn't work out, that was the wrong choice, change your mind slowly. Watch all the possibilities unfold, and maybe this possibility is exactly what you should be doing. Anyway, that's it. If you have any comments, comment below. I'd love to hear what you think of all this insanity and how if we start, how we can start loosening up what we think is real in the world. And you know you're getting close to true enlightenment when you suspect you might be insane for thinking these thoughts. That's it. Thanks, guys. Bye.